Welcome. Now, let's begin the news by telling you that President Bola Tinubu has received the Senegalese President Bassirou Faye at the Aso Rock Villa, Abuja. Faye, who arrived at 3:09 p.m., was received at the forecourt of the villa on Thursday, marking his first visit to Nigeria since assuming office last month. Faye, who is 44, the youngest president in Senegal history, secured victory in a delayed presidential election in April, garnering over 54% of the votes. Away from that now, the Nigerian Labour Congress and Trade Union Congress has expressed disappointment over the 48,000 naira minimum wage proposed by the federal government, saying that the wage proposal is insensible and significantly short in meeting the needs of the Nigerian workers. The president of Nigerian Labour Congress, Joe Ajero, and the vice president of Trade Union Congress, Tommy Etim, made the assertion in a media conference today, immediately after the national minimum wage negotiation with the federal government in Abuja on Wednesday. The union leader said government's failure to provide any substantiated data to support their offer exacerbates the situation, adding that the proposed amount lacks of transparency and good faith, undermines the credibility of the negotiation process, and erodes trust between the parties involved.
Of a paltry 48,000 naira as the minimum wage does not only insult the sensibilities of Nigerian workers, but also falls significantly short of meeting our needs and aspirations. In contrast, organized private sector proposed an initial offer of 54,000. Though it is worth noting that even the least paid workers in the private sectors receive 78,000 naira. As clearly stated by the organized private sector, highlighting the stark disparity between the proposed minimum wage and prevailing standards, further demonstrating the unwillingness of the employers and government to faithfully negotiate a fair national minimum wage for workers in Nigeria.
Today, as a result of these policies of the federal government, a lot of Nigerian workers and the masses in general are affected by the deliberate policies inflictment of the hardship on Nigerian workers. Together in this reasonable dialogue, we can work to give Nigerian workers a 615,000 minimum wage, as proposed by NLC and TUC on the basis of evidence and data. This will be in keeping with the pledge of President.
The acting executive secretary of the National Universities Commission, Chris Mayaki, says the federal government is working to reconstitute the governing councils of universities. He revealed this to education reporters in Abuja on Wednesday. He noted that the Minister of Education, Professor Tahir Mamman, had in place a panel to work on the list. The NUC executive secretary said the council would be inaugurated once the list was consummated. His remarks comes as a response to the 2-week ultimatum issued by the Academic Staff Union of Universities to the government to reconstitute the governing councils of federal universities. Speaking on a number of universities in the country, the NUC boss said the commission was committed to expanding access to higher education. On to Rivers politics now. A major showdown is imminent between the state governor Siminalayi Fubara and the 23 local government chairmen of the state, as he warned the council bosses to be mindful of their actions as their tenure elapses in a few days. Fubara handed down the warning at the flag-off of the Ilele-Umuku Road in the state on Thursday. The governor advised against hurting anyone in the guise of supporting any politician in the state. Now, to discuss this, I'm being joined by Professor Richard Wer, Associate Professor of Public Law, Rivers State University. Good evening, sir. Welcome.
Good evening, and good evening, Nigerians.
Thank you very much for joining us, sir. Now, sir, Governor Fubara seems to be talking through tough right now. Do you sense he is getting backings from other strong political stakeholders in Rivers State? What do you think?
Well, I think I think he probably just realized that he either has to act or allow himself be dragged down. Because so far, citizens had been disappointed in Rivers State with his inability to respond the way they expect him to respond to the activities of those with whom he's, as it were, having this misunderstanding. So I think he's found his voice because he has realized that there is no other way to go. His back is on the wall and he needs to move forward. That's
it's very
what I think
interesting
has
that you
happened,
should use
not
the term.
necessarily backing.
Okay, so it's very interesting that you should use the term "he's found his voice" because many people have thought from before that he was a bit too silent regarding the situation between him and his predecessor. But speaking of his predecessor, now the current governor, Datimilala Fubara, has ordered a probe on the administration of the immediate past governor, Nyesom Wike. Do you think that Fubara's decision to probe his predecessor can be seen as a political witch hunt situation, or is it a legitimate exercise of his powers as governor?
I think it's a legitimate exercise in law of Rivers State, by every government in Rivers State. We have had this kind of inquiry after Governor Dele's tenure. We had it when Governor Wike came in, who is now FCT minister. So it's a normal thing. The Commission of Inquiry Act, Chapter 30 of Laws of the Rivers State of Nigeria, give them the power to set up these inquiries whenever, for the governor to set up an inquiry whenever he deems it desirable to do so for purposes of investigating any activity, either by a government functionary, any official, any public officer, or any individual within the state. So it is normal for commissions of inquiry to be set up where there are issues that need to be sorted out. And there are a lot of issues going around in the state about appropriation or wrongful appropriation of public property and wrongful appropriation of public funds as well. So I think such inquiry will definitely have a lot to reveal.
All right, Professor, so we're seeing a situation in Rivers State like never before. The rate of attrition, the rate of people resigning from their offices is rather alarming. So the question is, what are the legal implications of this mass resignation of commissioners, and how can that impact the state, the governance of the state itself?
Absolutely no impact. What happened is you had an unusual situation where an outgoing governor set up the cabinet of his successor and populated that cabinet with his loyalists. And so with this crisis that has broken out between him and his successor, naturally, his loyalists had to pull out. If the state governor is investigating activities of the last administration, is investigating the activities of those same men who have shown disloyalty. You recall earlier in the administration, they pulled out on the orders of their so to speak, their master or the person they are representing. And they were more or less answering to the former governor and not to this governor. It was an absurdity because he had an administration that had about 10 commissioners that were not loyal to the administration and were actually acting for a force that has publicly presented itself as fighting the administration and trying to destroy the administration. So there is absolutely no legal implication. Neither is there a social implication because, I mean, everybody understands what has happened, that the fingers the former governor has in the administration have had to move because the administration has declared war against the master they represent. So I think it has no legal implication whatsoever. It does not make any statement about the administration.
All right, so while you're saying that it has no implication whatsoever, it is, however, understood that there is crises in Rivers State. Now, regarding these crises, is there any constitutional laid-down process that can help the situation in Rivers State at the state level? What does the Nigerian Constitution provide to help?
I have long insisted that
Go on,
I
please.
have long insisted that, look, on issues of governance, there is very little room for applying personal wisdom on these matters. The law is clear that if a person defects from his position in the House, from his party that's sponsored into another party, that he loses his seat. And if you look at the section 2 of it, which talks of what should follow, does not provide that that person needs to be present where the matter is being discussed by the House. It does not provide for them to be present. It does not provide for them to play any role. So if that situation has taken place and the surviving members...
There, I think we lost Professor Wokocha, but thank you very much, Professor Wokocha, for joining us this evening and giving your insight on the River State crises. Moving on now, Nigeria continues to make progress towards improving the socio-economic conditions and political underrepresentation of women. This discourse, the disparity in political representation between men and women, is one of the world's biggest challenges. News Central's Chidima Ona shares more in this report.
United Nations statistics show women's participation in politics in Nigeria has remained at 6.7% in elective and appointive positions, which is far below the global average of 22.5%. From 1999 till date, only 157 women have been elected into the 469-member National Assembly compared to 2,657 men during the same period. These numbers have prompted advocacy groups to raise awareness about the importance of women's voices in decision-making processes.
As long as they constitute the majority of our population, and they constitute the majority when it comes to electioneering and other democratic activities, I think it's just fair enough for us to have them in decision-making.
Political participation is a vital aspect of achieving gender equality. However, it can only be achieved through adequate education of both genders and initiatives that tackle illiteracy and equip women with the confidence to navigate the political landscape.
The percentage of the girl children that are out of school today is quite high. So we must ensure that we educate our children, we get the out of school children back to school so that they are well educated. When they are well educated, they will get good employment. When they are well employed, they will get, good pay. When you are not well paid, you are not financially stable, you cannot have political representation because politics is not cheap.
While other challenges, including financial constraints and deep-rooted cultural norms often limit the reach of empowerment programs, more women and men, through initiatives like this, seek to strengthen laws in support of women's political participation.
We need a series of orientation. We need a series of value revisitation. We need a series of value review. And again, we can have them in governance through amendment to our constitutions. But we can't amend when there's no frantic efforts by the people to ensure that we change the perception, the value system that see women as playing the second field in the society.
Single gender list must be eradicated in all states across this country, where we have 40 House of Assembly members and they are all men, or where we have 20 House of Assembly members and they are all women. We must ensure that we keep talking about it, that it must be eradicated. It should become a taboo.
The road to gender equality in Nigeria is long, but current growth programs offer glimmers of hope. Experts also believe that to address the gender disparity in politics, more women should be included in governance.
The inaugural flight of 2024 intending pilgrims has arrived in Medina in Saudi Arabia safely. The first flight from Nigeria conveyed prospective pilgrims from Jega and Ara local government areas of Kebbi State and officials of the State Pilgrims Welfare Board. The intending pilgrims interviewed expressed appreciation to the state governor, Dr. Nasir Idris, as well as the executive chairman, Kebbi State Pilgrims Welfare Board, Alhaji Faruku Aliyu Enabo, for their efforts to ensure the successful takeoff of the inaugural flight. While commending the Saudi airliners for its commitment towards a hitch-free journey, board member of the State Pilgrims Board, Alhaji Husseini Argungu, appreciated the authorities of Saudi Arabia for organizing a befitting welcome for the first set of intending pilgrims from Nigeria. Now, the Nigerian Red Cross has called on well-meaning citizens in the country to support efforts aimed at reaching over 30 million citizens facing severe hunger crises. The Red Cross made this known during the launch of its 2024 Unified Plan for Nigeria and the relaunch of its hunger crisis appeal, seeking to raise about $63 million for aid. Amadine Uyi reports.
It was the launch of the 2024 Nigerian Red Cross Unified Plan, alongside the relaunch of its hunger crisis appeal. The launch, expected to provide insights into the Red Cross comprehensive strategy to address critical issues facing Nigeria, particularly hunger and food insecurity. The Red Cross says that millions in dollars are needed to provide aid for over 10 million vulnerable persons in the country.
The plan that the Nigerian Red Cross has to meet the needs of humanitarian sector in Nigeria and the vulnerable people, how to serve them in Nigeria for 2024. And as you heard today, Nigeria Red Cross wants to serve more than 10 million people that are impacted by various crises in Nigeria. And it is requesting that it needs about $63 million to be able to do that.
The Red Cross delegation, while speaking to the media during the launch, says that there is a need to focus its humanitarian intervention in areas facing severe food crisis.
So as you heard, the biggest part of this money or these resources that we are asking for will go to serving the humanitarian impact of the various vulnerabilities in Nigeria. That means that the crisis in Northeast. So I think we are saying that we want to serve about 1 million people in the Northeast that are impacted by the various challenges that are happening in the Bay States and surrounding the Bay States.
The president of the Nigerian Red Cross Society, who was also present, urged government to do more for those in need.
Nigerian government is trying, but we need them to do more and to be more committed, in it. We know that various functions of government, especially the basic needs of the people, is the responsibility of government rights. But all the same, when it comes to classifying the areas of needs, those that are really socially denied, economically denied, especially that are exposed to disaster and are victims of conflicts and crises, I think we should give more attention to them.
With millions in Nigeria facing severe food crisis, the Red Cross is calling on the public to support fellow citizens facing starvation. In Abuja for News Central, I am Amadine Uyi.
To security matters now. Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission has called for more efforts in tracking terrorist funding trail in a bid to cut the supply line of illicit financial flows which funds criminal groups. The anti-graft agency made this known at a multi-stakeholders dialogue aimed at preventing terrorism financing and ending violence extremism in the northeastern part of the country. News Central's Joshua Imarai completes the story.
In a bid to combat the growing threat of terrorism, security experts, intelligence officials and stakeholders converge on the nation's capital to brainstorm on strategies for preventing terrorism financing and violent extremism in Nigeria. The high-level meeting was prompted following growing concerns over the funding of terrorist activities which have wreaked havoc on the northeast region in recent years.
So many times people come to me to say, Mr. Milaye, you are a Nigerian. How come you people put Nigeria on the grey list? I always respond, we did not put Nigeria on the grey list. It's neither Java nor the FTF, but Nigeria put ourselves on the grey list.
In March alone, 2024, the federal government naming 15 entities, including 9 individual and 6 bureau de change operators and firms that are said to be involved in terrorism financing, has highlighted the pressing issue of terrorism and terrorist financing in our country.
Stakeholders urge citizens to join forces in combating terrorism financing, stressing that Nigeria's cooperation with law enforcement agencies is crucial to winning the war.
The collaboration of every sector represented here is crucial. By combining our strengths, enhancing transparency, and reinforcing regulatory frameworks, we can sever the lifelines that enable terrorism.
If 4 out of every 5 Nigerians can stand for what we are here for today, in 6 months, we will nip this thing in the bud. We must not leave this responsibility to the military and to the law enforcement alone. In addition to the activities of the not-for-profit, we have also realized that there are some of these young men that they use to launder money now. Of course, some of you are aware of our activities in the area of investigating, virtual currency trading, cryptocurrency, and all of that. There are also potential platforms to fund terrorism, and a lot of people don't understand that.
While some argue that global terrorism poses a persistent threat to many, stakeholders here say that cutting off the resources of terrorist groups can effectively end the menace. They advocate for a multifaceted approach combining kinetic and non-kinetic methods to depriving terrorists of their resources. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
Now, in a bid to curb the level of criminal activities in the state, the Borno State Police Command has paraded 44 suspects for various offenses, including robbery, drug trafficking, and recovery of some items. In a surprising twist, some of the paraded suspects offered suggestions on how to arrest, or rather how to address, the growing problem of crime in the state. News Central's Umaru Kirawa completes the report.
Another effort by the police to reduce level of crime in Borno State. The state's police public relations officer, Aso Kenneth, while presenting the suspects to the media, said the arrests were made following a series of intelligence-led operations carried out by the command's tactical teams.
The operation is known as Operation Kamdibi Fruta. It is a Kanuri word which means flush out criminals. The operation has yielded a positive result leading to the arrest of suspects, recovery of exhibits, and the increase in risk through surveillance, stop and search, and the constant raids of criminal hideouts.
The suspects, who were apprehended in different parts of the state, are expected to be prosecuted at a competent court of jurisdiction. The police also spoke about the pending investigation over the murder of Dr. Kamar Abdul Kadir, a lecturer at the University of Maiduguri.
Investigation is still ongoing, but like I assured you during our last press brief, once the investigation is being concluded, sometimes investigation takes time, and we won't want to rush into things. So we'll brief you whatever further development we have from it.
One of the suspects who was paraded described how antisocial elements use drugs to entice tricycle riders and then steal their belongings while they are asleep.
Dalilin zama zuwa irin wannan wajajen ya kamata a ce matasa da yawa ya kasance suna da sana'a akan dalilin irin wannan abun.
Another suspect suggested the need for enhanced community policing and increased collaboration between law enforcement agencies and the public.
Ke na rasa uwa na rasa uba kuma ina da mata. Ina zama a Abuja da mata na sallah saura kwana 3 na zo nan ko gidan hayan da zan zauna a ciki babu. Da na zauna a gidan kawuna kuma na ga gidan ya matse. Sai ne shawara kawai gwanda in je in yi koda wannan aikin mashin din in samu gidan haya in kama mata gida ni kuma in koma in yi aiki na a can. Shine kuma aka kama ni. Allah dai kawai ya ba mu aikin da zamu iya rike kanmu da ita kuma mu rufa ma matan mu asiri.
Addressing some of the primary drivers of criminal activities through social reorientation and empowerment are some of the steps which taken will lead to reduction of crimes in the state. In Maiduguri for News Central, Umaru Kirawa.
Now, a 17-man implementation committee has been inaugurated as part of efforts to restore peace in Bassa local government area of Plateau State, north-central Nigeria. The inauguration took place at the 3rd Armored Division, Maxwell Kobe Cantonment, Rukuba. News Central's Chizoba Anyenwe reports.
This is about the 3rd time an implementation committee such as this has been inaugurated, after a 36-man joint committee in September 2021 and a 26-man implementation committee, which was later increased to 55. The search for peace did not end there, as another 17-man implementation committee was again set up for the same cause. This committee did not yield the desired results and as such was dissolved, giving birth to yet another 17-man committee that was inaugurated today, all in a bid to restore elusive peace to the once home of peace and tourism.
I, Major General A.E. Abubakar, do hereby inaugurate you as the 17-man implementation committee.
The General Officer commanding 3 Armored Division of the Nigerian Army is optimistic that this committee will yield the desired results.
It is expedient for us to retrospect on how we have fared and how, even after 2 decades, we are still living in hostility. This, therefore, underscores the importance of this implementation committee.
The state governor represented at the event commended the efforts of the GOC, assuring that his administration will stop at nothing in supporting the committee to achieve its goals.
He said I should tell you, you are doing well, you have done well for Plateau State, you have done well for Nigeria. This is a step in the right direction.
The new committee seems resolute and determined to accomplish the reasons behind its establishment.
Assuring you, we are going to discharge this task with all our heart, without bias, without sentiment, without religion, background. If I discover my committee that will sabotage my effort, I will resign, because I believe on unity.
This committee, made up of 16 men and 1 woman, has till the end of August to submit their findings to the GOC. In Jos for News Central, Chizoba Anyonwe.
Now, climate action advocates in Nigeria have called for the integration of the needs of persons with disabilities in the nation's climate action policy and for their inclusion in the decision-making process related to climate action. They say persons living with disabilities lack adequate support to mitigate the effects of climate change on their livelihoods. Idong Joseph reports.
Individuals with disabilities, particularly women and girls, are often more affected by the effects of climate change or natural disasters. Unfortunately, over the years, their representation and participation in climate change mitigation sessions has not been significant to help cushion the effects of climate change or natural disasters on their lives.
The relevant stakeholders and all the duty bearers have started the conversation on who is going for COP29. How do we ensure that we have full and complete representation of women with disabilities in COP29?
At this stakeholders' dialogue on disability inclusion in climate policies and programs, the Senior Special Assistant to the President highlights government's efforts aimed at mitigating climate change.
As our policies and programs have been integrated into the national, state and state development plans. Also, institutional frameworks have been established at the national and sub-national levels to guarantee the effective implementation of the SDGs in Nigeria. Also, Nigeria as a party to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change.
Advocates, while calling for equal access to opportunities for women and girls with disabilities, urged the government to review existing policies to help include the needs of persons with disabilities.
We want to see women with disabilities being included and empowered. Let them be empowered economically so they can be able to fight for their rights individually first before we get to other institutions. So our policies need to clearly state that this is the right of women with disabilities when it comes to climate change issues.
With the 13th goal of the Sustainable Development Goals highlighting the importance of achieving sustainable development by 2030 through climate action, advocates say to make significant progress, there is a need to consider addressing the inequality and marginalization of women and girls with disabilities. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idonku Joseph.
Welcome back. And now the news continues in East Africa, where Kenyan President William Ruto and his Ugandan counterpart Yoweri Museveni met in Nairobi. The two discussed key bilateral issues, which Museveni says will help foster a relationship between the two neighboring countries. President Museveni expressed happiness about the projects, stating that it's a step closer to the three historical missions: prosperity through wealth creation and market access, strategic security, and utilizing togetherness. Bilateral agreements regarding issues such as petroleum and youth policies were signed at the State House in Nairobi during Museveni's two-day state visit to Kenya.
The tripartite agreement on the importation and transit of refined petroleum products through Kenya to Uganda, whose signing we've just witnessed, enables Uganda National Oil Company Limited to import refined product commodities directly from producers in different jurisdictions, thus bringing to an end the challenges faced by the sector in Uganda. We also shared our concern about the threat of terrorism and insecurity in our region and affirmed our commitment to strengthening regional peace and security approaches and programs. Kenya will continue to consult and work closely with Uganda in addressing security challenges in our sub-region, including in the Sudan, South Sudan, Somalia, DRC, and elsewhere. During my meeting with President Museveni, we expressed concern on the drawdown of ATMIS in Somalia, and we urged that the timelines for the drawdown align with the security conditions on the ground in Somalia, not just the calendar that has been laid out.
I'm very happy about all these projects will now move us closer to the three historical missions: prosperity through wealth creation and market access, strategic security, and utilizing maximally the
Sudanese and international non-governmental organizations have urged Sudan's armed forces and rival parliamentaries to end collective punishment and restore life-saving telecommunications as war rages in the country. According to a statement signed by 94 NGOs, including Access Now, the Norwegian Refugee Council, and the International Rescue Committee, indiscriminate attacks and disruption of telecommunications by warring parties have severely affected civilians' ability to cope with the effects of the war, as well as amid aid workers' capacity to deliver essential services. It added that both sides have consistently used targeted attacks on telecommunications infrastructure or the imposition of bureaucratic restrictions, leaving millions of Sudanese without access to support networks to survive what the United Nations has called one of the worst humanitarian crises in recent memory. And we now head to Southern Africa, where the wave of kidnappings in Mozambique has once again plagued the country, constraining investment and leading business people to leave. The private sector says it is increasingly constrained by the intensification of kidnappings in the country, with businesses demanding the government's collaboration in guaranteeing security in order to ensure a good business environment. For some weeks now, Maputo has been experiencing a new wave of kidnappings, especially of business people, with 2 Portuguese Mozambicans having been targeted in the last month and suspicions of the involvement of agents linked to police investigations in this type of crime. Now in North Africa, Tunisian President Kais Saied on Thursday criticized foreign interference over an international backlash over recent arrests of journalists, political commentators and lawyers, which he defended as lawful. Civil society in the North African country condemned the arrests as a crackdown on dissent in the country that saw the onset of the Arab Spring. Saied, who seized sweeping power in 2021, ordered the foreign ministry to summon ambassadors of several countries and inform them that Tunisia is an independent state, in a video released by his office.
أدعو في أقرب الأوقات السفراء عددا من الدول وممثلي بعض الجهات في تونس وبلغهم احتجاجا شديد اللهجة بأن ما يفعلونه هو تدخل سافر غير مقبول في شؤوننا الداخلية.
Welcome back. Slovakia's president-elect Peter Pellegrini describes the situation with Prime Minister Robert Fico as a difficult one while he spoke with journalists outside the hospital in Banska Bystrica. Fico is able to speak Thursday but is still not completely safe. Pellegrini said, as police charged the suspect in the attack they said was politically motivated. Fico was shot multiple times while greeting people in front of a cultural community center where a government meeting had been held.
In this moment, it is a very difficult situation, and we cannot say in this moment that the Prime Minister is completely safe. Because of the accident from yesterday, it will be atmosphere before and the situation after this terrible accident of yesterday. And the only next days will show us how we, not the politicians, but also the media and the society, how we will be able to handle this. I hope that our allies and our neighbors are standing behind us and with us. I would like to thank to all the presidents, to all the prime ministers around the world, because they are not just from our neighborhood, but from all over the world, for sending greetings, of course.
Business now. On average, startups take 3 to 5 years to become profitable. Unfortunately, in Africa, 70 to 80% of startups fail within 5 years. Profitability is crucial, but startups need time to innovate and find success. By measuring performances using various metrics, founders can navigate their business journey and make tough decisions. Ifayomi Carr, principal at Flourish Ventures, discussed the high failure rate of African startups within 5 years on a Business Edge today.
It's important to understand that while 70 to 80% may fail, an additional, those 20 to 30% who succeed have outsized returns. And so the success stories are small but mighty. And it's clear that what these startups are doing is incredibly difficult. They're actually fulfilling a really difficult task in a really challenging environment. And so startups can be blocked by regulatory headwinds and by the incredible macro challenges that we're facing in different markets across Africa. So in the face of these difficulties, it's incredible how resilient some of these entrepreneurs can be to still find success.
And now sports. In the world of sports, the FIFA Under-17 World Cup is set to undergo a huge transformation after the global football body announced that the number of participating teams is set to increase. The tournament had been contested by 24 teams recently, but future editions will now feature 48 teams. During the last edition hosted by Indonesia in 2023, Africa had 4 representatives. But according to FIFA, from the 2025 edition onwards, Africa will be represented by a record 10 teams. Europe has the highest number with 11. Africa has the most titles in the history of the tournament, with Nigeria winning a record 5 editions in 1985, 1993, 2007, 2013, and 2015, while West African neighbors Ghana have also won it twice. The next 5 editions will be hosted by Qatar, starting in 2025. And Manuel Neuer and Toni Kroos could each attend their 4th European Championships after being named in host nation Germany's provisional Euro 2024 squad. Midfielder Kroos, who is 34, had announced his international retirement in July 2021, but reversed the decision in March following talks with head coach Julian Nagelsmann. Veteran goalkeeper Manuel Neuer, who is 38 and who has not played for his country since 2022 after breaking his leg following the Qatar World Cup, is also included. Others include Fulham goalkeeper Bernd Leno, Barcelona midfielder Ike Gundogan, Arsenal forward Kai Havertz and Brighton midfielder Pascal Gross. Bayern Munich duo of Leon Goretzka and Serge Gnabry miss out, while Tottenham striker Timo Werner is absent with a hamstring injury. Sevilla captain and record appearance maker Jesus Navas will leave at the end of the season, the La Liga club said on Thursday. The 38-year-old fullback won 8 trophies during 2 long spells covering 17 seasons at the team where he started his career. Navas played 688 games for Sevilla across all competitions, making his 500th appearance in La Liga for the Andalusian side in mid-week. The Spanish international has scored 39 goals and provides 119 assists in the time at Sevilla, starting his career as a winger and later playing at right back. Navas has won more trophies and played more matches for Sevilla than any other player in the club's history. And now cycling. According to the race organizers, the Spanish Grand Tour cycling race, the Vuelta a España, will start in Monaco in 2026 edition. The French Riviera city previously hosted the Grand Depart of the 2009 Tour de France. La Vuelta had an international grand departure for the first time in Lisbon in 1997, and the race will also begin in the Portuguese capital this year. The 3-week Spanish race has twice started in the Netherlands, in Assen in 2009 and Utrecht in 2022, and in France once in Nimes in 2017. The 2024 race runs from August 7 to September 8 across 21 grueling stages in the Spanish summer heat, covering 3,265 kilometers. La Vuelta is one of the 3 major tours, along with the Tour de France and Giro d'Italia. And that's all this hour. But before we go, let's take another look at some of the major stories. President Tinubu receives Senegalese President Faye. Kenya and Uganda ink strategic deals. And Tunisian President blasts foreign criticism of arrests. Do remember, send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number on your screen now. And do follow us on social media. We are at New Central TV. You can watch New Central live on DSTV channel 422, StarTimes channel 274, AVO TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. My name is Mazino Appeal.